So hi folks, got an absolutely amazing guest on here, Fiona Rose Diamond. I've wanted to get her on for ages. She's kind of like a bit of a heroic figure, really, I think. And I first met her during coronavirus when she was leading all of these campaigns. She was being arrested and everything else like that. So we will talk about that now. But what she's really into at the moment is digital ID, and she's kind of like an expert on it and is leading the fight against it. So, look, it's fantastic to speak to you. Fiona, tell us now, people have got very relaxed now about the digital ID, thinking that it's all over, that we've kind of won it a little bit and it's not compulsory. Tell us the truth about all of that.
So I'm still absorbing that introduction. I think that was one of the best introductions I've had in a long time. And we have known each other for a long time. You were
We
there
have.
in
Yes,
2020.
yes,
So yeah, sorry, I was kind of smiling through all that. I thought, wow, yeah, that's true. It's been a while.
yeah.
Um, so let me just get over that because I feel like a bit of a permanently exhausted pigeon at the moment. So that was
Right,
very
okay.
flattering. What was your question again?
The question
The
was really now that it's no longer sort of compulsory, a digital ID, but it kind of still is. And it was interesting. I went on a march recently the other day with Alan Miller of Together ID. And he was a lot of the people who were saying, well, why are they marching? Because digital ID is no longer compulsory and all that. So is that the case? Can you clarify what's happening with all of that?
Yeah, so no, that's not the case. And I think this is where it's very important that people need to understand the infrastructure that has already been built and how the system that was proposed was going to be used. So they have essentially said that we're not going to be issuing what was going to be or proposed to be called the brick card. They've said that they're not going to make that one government issued digital credential mandatory. Now, that sounds like a big announcement, but it isn't, because the actual checks themselves, the digital checks, are very much the same as they have done to the company directors, the 8 million company directors of limited companies, in that they will be mandatory, they will be digital, and they will be via one login. But that was always the case. There's nothing, it's I understand why people have taken this as a bit of a win, and I do believe the announcement has been made to placate the resistance and to quell it a little bit and to get people to stop having the conversation. But there has been there's been no U-turn. Digital checks are still mandatory, and all the government's done is basically abandoned what was a symbol, which I called a red herring, that was the brick card, which was never even official. So the brick card proposal was from June 2025 by the Labour Together think tank, coming up with this genius idea to deal with mass illegal migration, as if we think that they've just sat in a boardroom and thought, oh, how do we solve this problem that we created to cause the chaos to bring about the control that we need? So it's all kind of farcical. But there's been no U-turn. But this is where one login is so important, because one login is the base infrastructure of the entire design of the entire system. The UK Gov Wallet sits on top of the one login, which is the app that people will be required to download to host the tokens, one of which would have been the brick card. The Gov Wallet's being trialled at the moment with the veterans card and the digital driver's license, and brick card would have sat on that wallet as a token to tokenize your personhood, or one of the tokens that tokenizes your personhood. So the Gov Wallet's still there. One login was rolled out in 2021. It's still being built. It's still being expanded. And it's still pretty much all the same. And we don't doubt that they'll bring about another token that they'll issue for right to work and right to rent, but it's still mandatory, it's still digital, it's still via one login, which collects your biometrics. So the system is still there, and it's frustrating. Yeah.
There were people, I was walking by and they were saying, this is ridiculous. Why are they marching? Why are they marching? Because, it's all been cancelled now and stuff. So it's kind of like a diversionary tactic, is it?
I think so, but I think that the brick card itself was a test. It was a test to see what the public reaction would be, how quickly, the resistance might form, and also where the attention and the outrage would sort of focus. And they knew that obviously lots of people were talking about this brick card, which was only ever a proposal. It was never an official government name. It was never officially adopted. But just days before this announcement, the government assigned this 32-year-old that used to work for Meta, quite senior positions, obviously just, one of those tech geeks, who's an MP, Josh Simons, to lead this digital ID rollout. So I understand why people are confused by it, and I think that we as campaigners may have a little something to do with that, because I feel like we've known for quite some time, actually since 2015, that digital ID was part of the plan, because it was written down in the Sustainable Development Goals, obviously pushed initially by the World Economic Forum, globalists like Tony Blair. It's been on the cards for a long time. Nothing was surprising, but nobody really paid attention to it until Keir Starmer announced on the 26th of September, 2 days before the Labour conference, that there will be a mandatory digital ID to work. I don't know why I try and do the accent there or try and do an impression of it, but he's a bit nasally and squeaky, isn't he? And I think I usually get it bang on, but not today. So no one really paid attention to it. But then we were all very, a lot of groups and people were quite reactive, and I think some of the mainstream groups like Big Brother Watch and Liberty did a wonderful thing, but they are mainstream and they will only go so far, and they rely on government documents, government announcements. They trust things that the government say. They think that debates are a good thing, and whereas I think it's all fucking theatre. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's
I
fine.
don't know if I'm okay. So you know me though, I was going to struggle a little bit with a potty mouth. I'm better now. I've stopped drinking, mate. But no, I feel like we could have done a better job in explaining the basic infrastructure, because nothing has changed. And the digital ID that we should be looking at and saying, God, no way, is really the UK Gov wallet, which is already out, already being trialed. I think 40 million plus has been spent specifically on that, 340 million on the project so far, probably more because, they hide stuff, and 1.8 billion set aside by the government to spend on digital ID over the coming 5 years, and it's probably going to exceed that. So nothing stopped. The infrastructure's there. They've just removed this symbol that people thought was digital ID, but the digital ID is the UK Gov wallet. That's the app of apps. That's the people tracking super cookie that they will force people to download through exclusion and coercion, and we've seen that many times before.
Yes.
So it's the Gov wallet. We need to be saying, right, everything's going to be tokenized on there. Central bank digital currency will be on there. Everything will be tokenized. Everything on the supply chain, everything that you think that you own, and you'll be surveilled and tracked and traced for all eternity if you don't stop it. So it's the Gov wallet we need to get people to look at. So I need to do a better job.
So, well, I think you do an amazing job because you are out there
Thanks.
leading the troops, as it were, and it's a very brave position to be in. Now, on my channel, I would say people maybe not so clued up as you about digital ID. Could you be very sort of basic with us and tell us why we should fear digital ID? What is the problem with it? Because some people say, well, it's all easy, it's all in one place. What's the problem? What is the problem with it?
I think the question should begin with anything that they're trying to force upon people and say is mandatory, which, by the way, it still is. As I said, the digital checks still are, much like Companies House. Anything that they're trying to force in that way should have a big, massive question mark over it at the very least. But I think the most important thing is, this is why the main sort of message of my campaign from the beginning has been to know thine enemy and know their plan. And I think when you know the roots of what they're trying to achieve with digital ID, and you can see the destination, obviously the journey and the stops might change, but it's knowing where this is coming from and the roots and the groups and the organizations that are behind this, and that it's above the level of nation. And I think that's where people's sort of research and knowledge needs to begin. And obviously that's why I put the information I have on the website, because I've no problem with technology advancing. Do I wish that we stopped at Nokia 3310? Yeah, we're
Yes.
looking back.
Yes.
And I think that they've trained us to accept these biometrics, our fingerprints on the phone, the iris scan, the face scan. They've accepted us over the past 20 odd years to accept this as part of the norm, airport checks, the expansion of surveillance. There's a lot of sort of mission creep that's already been started and been rolled out over the last several years. But when you tie all that together and you see that as part of the system that they want to create, this digital infrastructure to control and monitor every aspect of people's lives, it's not a secret. I think this is it. It's not a secret. It's written down. And it comes from, I suppose, on the surface, the 2030 agenda for sustainable development, which obviously we, 193 nations, including ourselves, signed up for. They did on our behalf, because I don't remember voting for it.
No.
In 2015, yeah, these 17 goals at a United Nations General Assembly. But prior to that, you had Tony Blair pushing, the Globalist pushing, the World Economic Forum pushing for a digital infrastructure. And they say it's, on the surface is humanitarian, because so many people don't have a legal identity throughout the world. I don't know if it's 1.8 million or billion, I can't remember the figure now, but they're acting like it's a humanitarian thing because everybody has the right to access society and justice. Now, you look at certain countries in Africa, that looks very different to what it looks like here. So I think we're all very used to technology. We're all quite used to biometrics, but the difference with this is choice. They have tried to force something and are trying to force something and have signed us up for something that nobody voted for, nobody agreed with. And they're trying to say that all of this is part of modernizing government. And Keir Starmer's a liar. I think we can all see that he's a liar. He's pathological. And I
Yes.
don't think we should be trusting anything that he says, because if anyone read beyond the headlines, you would have seen that Keir Starmer said himself, oh, we're not going to force this brick card, say this brick card on you. And, we're not going to make you use that particular credential, but we are going to mandate digital checks for right to work and right to rent, which will be via one login. So again, it's just a softening of language, and I think it's really been done to placate the resistance and to stop it. But when people understand the roots, when I say know thine enemy and know their plan, and the World Economic Forum, Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, which just happened to be founded a year after we signed up for this with the United Nations, and the sinister organizations that are behind it, and what they would like to do is to track and trace and control every aspect of society. And people need to start looking at things holistically. So the rollout of surveillance, the 15-minute cities that we were told 3-4 years ago were a complete conspiracy theory, the takeover of farming, trying to stop cows farting, all of this stuff is entirely for control. And the digital aspect of it is that that's how they're going to be able to control, because they're going to be able to surveil and watch and track and trace, program your money into central bank digital currency that's programmable on the blockchain, meaning every single transaction and every log and every time you use a credential on your phone to check, a loyalty card or your driver's license or your passport or your right to work and right to rent check, which will be a token, it will all be logged. So your whole life will be tracked from even not just from the minute you wake up, but 24/7. That's the plan. That's why we should be worried about digital ID. And I'm not telling people to listen. I've got social media, I've got certain technology, but I do not have biometrics on my phone. I have tried to remove certain things.
Yes.
And when it comes to data collection, the most personal data you can harvest is someone's biometrics, their face, their iris, their fingerprint, and keep that alongside a copy of their passport and a copy of their driving license, all digital already on one login, and combine all that. It's a hacker's honeypot. It's a hacker's honeypot anyway. So it's the unsafe and fragility of the system itself. But the fact is, when you know what it's going to be used for, total control, it's not hard to not want it. But yeah, I just feel that
Some people would
education's,
say,
yeah.
are we being too, the horrible word, the conspiracy theorists, are we likely to end up like China, when how far, people don't think in this country that it's never going to go as far as places like China. Are we too trusting the British public? Are we naive?
Like, did anyone think in 2010 or years ago, whenever, anything pre-2020, did anyone think that you would be arrested for not wearing a mask that was baseless and unscientific, only to have them say later, 4 years later, oh, by the way, like, it was never really a law. We just kind of, they were all sat there in the COVID inquiry saying, oh, it wasn't a law. It was just a regulation, it was just a rule. Like, because they didn't abide by it, but many of us got arrested, convicted, and charged. We went through hell. So did anyone think that that was going to be where we were? Did anyone think that the government would roll out a jab that they told everyone was safe and effective when actually they put away 1.7 billion in 2020 to pay for the injury and harm. We've got to look at the past, in the recent past, the last half a decade, to see what they are capable of. And you have to then, like I said, I think education and informing yourselves and being accountable for your own knowledge. This is the problem starts when we rely on people to give us the information. So don't even listen to me now. Go and research for yourself. Go onto my website, massnoncompliance.com, and read what I've written, but think critically and research for yourself the World Economic Forum, the Tony Blair Institute, the United Nations Agenda 2030. Go and look at it and you will come to the same conclusion. But I don't think that many people thought that we would be in this position right now, to be quite honest with you. But they have the 2030 agenda for sustainable development has a clock on it. They want to achieve these goals by 2030. The UN Agenda 21 was an agenda for the 21st century, had nothing really specific. 21st century, it's a century, yeah. So it's a long time, but Agenda 2030 has got lots of things they want to achieve by 2030, and we don't have up until the 29th of December 2029 to beat it. We need to be beating it when Keir Starmer wants these things implemented, which is by the end of 2027. If we haven't completely knocked this system down, I don't know if we'll have a chance of doing it. But with regards to China, there's a lot of again, there's lots of fear mongering in lots of different things, but I think we really do need to look at China, even though sometimes, there's things that are kind of inflated on social media. But their mission creep with their social credit system started decades ago. They have a patchwork of systems, across China. So it's not one big mandated, completely national 100% system across the whole of the country. But they have, different cities have a different patchwork, but they do have a social credit. So you are monitored and checked, and everything's digital when it comes to currency. If you are late on a loan payment, if you get into a little bit of debt, if you lose your job and you can't pay your loan, you get publicly shamed on a big billboard as someone, as a bad debtor, and then you get kicked out of your home. So then you're homeless, and then you've got no opportunity, you've got no home.
You can't get in, can you? You can't get through the door.
Everything's become automated, and the heavy reliance on technology and digitization of everything is why Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum, who actually has been replaced by Larry Fink now, right, who says that we need to look at the Chinese model, look at the Chinese model. They want it to be that's a test bed from communist China. And I think we do need to look at other countries, and they use Estonia as this like glowing example. What's it got, like 1.3 million people living in Estonia? And you think, how can you compare that to you just can't compare it to United Kingdom. But what they've done is they've pushed out all of the people who were, for example, my age, say 20, 30, 40s, have kind of fled from the country. You've got this elite class that have got a lot of money, and you've got the people that didn't have the opportunity to leave, who have been completely controlled. Estonia is no utopia in comparison. And then any other country you want to look at as well, any other European country, there's a lot of countries that have a form of digital ID. But they're not mandated in the same sense that they want to do in this country. So they take these examples. But they've got it in Italy, and they think it's no problem. But we are a bit of a test bed in the UK. But Australia, look to Australia now. Yes. Keir Starmer has announced, obviously, the government have announced the via the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill, the under 16s ban on social media, and the under 18s ban for VPNs. So how do people think that is going to be achieved? That will be achieved through the issuing of a digital credential to prove you're over the age of 18, which will host information about you via one login, all of your biometrics connected. So they'll say, by the way, guys, we've got this really convenient way for you to prove who you are whilst online, when downloading a VPN, when trying to access social media, and it will be a digital credential that's issued by the government. It's the only way that's going to work. So they will force upon 100% of people in the United Kingdom the onus to prove who you are to go online.
Yes.
It's not just kicking under 60, it's not going to just be that easy. And the under 18s ban for VPNs, again, both through the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. Well, what if you've got to prove who you are and that you're of age to be able to use that VPN? What's the point in VPNs? Like, it's for private and safe browsing. It's like the whole thing's a joke. And I've realized, I've got to get, because the questions that you ask as well, it's like communicating with people who might be new to this and might not understand why it's so bad. And I, as a campaigner, probably need to get a little bit better at communicating it. And I mean, I just look at it now, you see why I'm smiling, because I think it's also ridiculous. So I'm going to try not to swear. Because behind the veneer of these sustainable development goals and this flowery language and this rhetoric, this management speak that they all share across all these organizations, it's just an agenda for total control and total surveillance. They want to own everything on the land, in the sea, in the air. These globalists that think that their gods are dictating to every government across the world, who are all in bed with them at Davos. And we only need to look to the very recent past to know that we get constantly duped and lied to and manipulated and coerced. And I just think the last 5 years, and that's why we can't forget what happened, Liam, because lots of people want to leave 2020 and to 22, say when we were locked down, it was really bad. People want to leave that behind because they were fooled by the most blatant pathological liars we've seen collectively.
Do you think, though, that the Brits actually have it in them? Because when you go back to that coronavirus malarkey, there was probably 5 to 10 million people, I think, that stood up and said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not wearing the mask and everything else like that. But there was many, many more people that just went along with it. And it's the same with digital ID. I kind of feel that it's the same people again who are standing up and saying digital ID is a no-no. Do you think the Brits have got it in them to kind of stand up and defeat this?
100% I do, because I was there, you were there. I saw it go in 2020. I saw it go from 12, 13, 14 people outside Parliament in April of 2020, days after they locked us down, to 1.2 million 18 months later on the streets. And that was just in London. There was millions of people who were proactively resisting, proactively sharing the message, at least of skepticism around the science or around the mandates. It was because of protest that we stalled, because vaccine passports in 2021 were a test for this now. The infrastructure is part of what they're using, the technology now. So that to me was a test. But we pushed that back through protest. The NHS mandates, we pushed that back. We got them scrapped through protest. They didn't care about petitions and people signing an angry letter or emailing their MPs. It was the people's resistance. And campaigning on the streets for the longest time, up until January of 2022, when I organised the one where they threw all the uniforms over the gates of number 10. So, and I'm someone that I didn't work for the NHS. I'm not a clinician. I didn't take any jab. I didn't ever take any test. But I was there standing and offering a platform to the NHS workers, hundreds of thousands who were represented on the streets that day, to save their jobs, but probably also their lives. So we all need to pull together for one. I think we all need to understand what it really is about. And I think people like me can do a better job at explaining that, because there's lots of different viewpoints on all of this. But I do think that people have the power, because I think we would have been in a much, much, much darker position. And I think if anyone knew at the time what it was like in Portugal, in Spain, in Italy, in Germany, you would have seen not standing up soon enough got so they were locked down. I mean, Italy and Spain and Portugal were particularly bad, and here we resisted very, very quickly and very, very soon. So our resistance got us out of what could have been a very dark time. We weren't given Freedom Day in July of 2020 or 2021, July of 2021, when enough people got jabbed. Now, we were fighting out of that for a good 18 months, 2 years. And I think we would be in a much darker position. But the thing is, we don't need 100% of the United Kingdom to stand up to this proactively. great if you want to resist silently because you're scared. I get it. But I don't have as much respect for that kind of action. We need about 20 or 30%, in my opinion, to be quite proactive in this resistance. And thanks to COVID and thanks to the last half a decade, there's so many more people that don't believe a damn word the government says and are very aware of who the globalists are and what their power is. They're puppeteering every government globally or across the world if you're a flat earther. I don't know. But yeah, I think people can do it. I think we can resist it, but I think that the education on the topic is most important. And I've been slightly distracted recently because I'm also, studying a law degree full time in my second year. So I'm in and out. Like 1 minute I'm trying to put my brain in activism and have a chat with you or James English or whatever. And the next minute I'm like, right now I've got to do a really boring exam on contract law, which I can't stand. So
But what I like about you is that you're like the protest queen. I mean, people may not know on this thing on this program that Fiona, you were there when they had the debate in the Houses of Parliament. You were the voice up the back that was disrupting the whole thing. Tell us about that, and what does it take for you to go into that situation and disrupt a whole meeting like that? What's the kind of comeback on that?
Because I think of everything that I've gone through today, I am still fearless. I think from 2020, it wasn't my first interaction with the police, for example, only for like silly, when I was a student or whatever. I think I got done for criminal damage because I smashed a guy's guitar because he was being noisy or whatever. Like I'd had interactions with the police, so I wasn't petrified of authority. I've always questioned authority, so I was quite fearless. But equally, I used to drink, as you were around at that time. This is my 4th year sober, so I make better decisions.
Good for you.
Yeah, but I was quite reckless. I don't think I valued the gift of life in the first few years of this. So actually, I got sober in September 2022. So for those couple of years, I think I didn't care if I died or went to prison. I knew the fight was worth it. And I have seen some very, very dark times. Some of the arrests that I have been put through and the time in custody, whether it be 1, 2, or 3 days, I've been unlawfully strip searched. I've had the police beat me.
God.
I've had the worst circumstances, and then I've seen myself through all the trials. So I've self-represented it all. I've seen all the evidence. Yeah, of them trying to fit me up for offences that I didn't even commit, the lies that the police tell, and the fact, I mean, in the courtroom on one occasion 2 years ago, and I said you can't say that they're lying when you know that they're lying. You've got to find like a legally acceptable way to say that, you perhaps misremembering. They lie. The police lie, MO6 lies. MO6 is Met Operation 6, which deal with counterterrorism and public order. They changed that in 2020. So I was known and I went through so much. So and I know so much in a sense that I know where this plan has come from. This isn't new. Digital ID has always been on the cards. It's always been a tool that they've wanted to bring about the control that they require to bring about this agenda. And it's evil. It's pure evil, and they're evil. And when you realize that life will be nothing like it ever has been, where freedom will just become a nostalgic word that children don't even know the meaning to because they never would have experienced it, that's what keeps me going. Because people think they can comply their way out of tyranny. We've learned that you can't. And we learned that through the injury and death caused by the toxic injectables, which we said would happen. And we didn't want to see happen because nobody wants to be vindicated, but don't let us be right. We can't have another catastrophe like that to be proven right. It's evil. I'm fighting evil. Millions of other people are fighting evil. You are speaking truth and fighting evil. And that's the driver. So I am very aware of what's a crime, Liam. Okay. I'm very aware of what I can be arrested for and like dragged into custody for. And thankfully, I've not been arrested in the last few years. So I don't do things intentionally, recklessly, without any regards to potentially being arrested. So going into Parliament and voicing my opinion on the 8th of December during the debate on
Mhm.
digital ID, which was pure theatre, was precisely because of that, because it was theatre. I
Yes.
don't know why I went, because how could I think for a second I'd be able to sit there and keep my mouth shut and listen to this performance? They script quips, they script their little jokes between them, and they're playing with our lives. So it angers me and frustrates me. But there's nothing about going in and nothing illegal about disrupting a debate in Parliament. There was police waiting for me as I was escorted out of Parliament. Told I wasn't welcome back, but I don't think they can do that. So there was a moment there I was like, oh God, am I going to be arrested? But I didn't say anything that wasn't correct, and I
No.
didn't. I didn't
But it requires
say anything that
bravery.
could.
Bravery. It's very brave to do, and not
Yeah.
many people can do that sort of stuff. Do you
Well,
have,
it's
I mean,
it's
where does that come from within you? Why are you so sort of brave? It's not, it's, I thought it was interesting. You did a very interesting thing online where you were slightly complaining about people expecting you to be the one to stand up and take the hit. And why should it be you all the time? Because you do put yourself up front, but it's not kind of fair, is it? That you've got to take the stick and other
I
people are doing.
but there's people that like the people that support me, and the people that come to protest, and those millions and millions of amazing people that see this for what it is, and actually they themselves take risks every day, or that, especially during 2020, 2022. So I have a huge amount of respect for anyone that stood up in a very visual way, like in a proactive physical sense, that you went out and did something. I think the silent non-compliers are great. It takes a bit of strength to do that, but come on, you were not like someone that went out in London in 2021 when masks were mandated, and you get fined and sent home or arrested for just a small act like that. So I've got a lot of respect for millions of people. When I think I know what video you're referring to that I put online, um, because I'd had some people, and it was addressed to a specific sort of collective or group, very small group of people who, one, I've been arrested 16 times. I've got 13 convictions.
Yeah,
I've been,
good for
and a
you.
couple of them were from before. Yeah, I've got convictions for contempt of court, for being set up by the court, setting two dates at two times at two separate courts on the same day. So I got held look, they messed me around because they wanted to, convict me. I i have used up all of the grace from the judiciary that I potentially would be granted. I've had a couple of judges that effectively still convicted me because paint bombs number 10 Downing Street, so that was criminal damage, so I'm going to get convicted. But they agreed with me, but they were like,
Yes.
well, you said that you did it, so, and you're on camera throwing like 10 paint bombs. I'm like, yeah, okay. um but that video was aimed at people who sit there, don't do anything, have never done anything, who are keyboard warriors, who sit at home lecturing and demanding things of other people.
Yes.
Because what I said, and I don't know how many of your viewers would have obviously followed you from years back and obviously have been part of what was the freedom movement, because I think we're beyond that now. But that time and that particular movement was an amazing moment in history. It was absolutely wonderful because it was true unity. I've never seen anything
Yes.
like it before the,
Amazing.
ego and destruction came in. But it also bred this toxicity and this entitlement from people who thought that they could demand of people like me that I go and do a type of thing, or I take a type of risk. Now, I've been convicted of organising some of the protests, obviously, along with Kate Shamarani, a few of them
Yes.
together, and others outside that. Um, those public order offences, I've got a lot of them. I've got a lot of public order offences. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the law in 2022 and in 2023 changed with amendments to the Public Order Act, with the Police Crimes Sentencing and Courts Act. It takes the police and the courts a while. They get some grace before they get their commencement orders to enforce the law. They get some grace to learn how to implement it, right? Looking at these new laws, and that video I did a few months ago, I think around about when I did the protests on digital ID in
Yes.
October-ish, September,
Yes.
October, was because the law change has meant that I would see myself in prison for 2, 3, 5, 7, or 10 years. I
Yes.
wouldn't get a slap on the wrist now.
No.
And nor would I be able to pull off the things that I do pull off. But I'm not going to martyr myself for anyone. So don't
No.
tell me what to do. Go out if you're not going to do it yourself. And then people say like, "Oh, but you've got a following and you've got blah blah blah." I'm like, "Yeah, because I worked my ass off." And I think
Yes.
Liam, you'll know from being around back in that
Mm.
2020. When did I ever take the microphone at a protest that I organised?
No, no, you
I
didn't.
I didn't.
No.
I didn't. I was happy in the background
Yes.
organizing.
Yes, you
Kate
did.
was MC a couple of times. I
Yeah.
didn't take the microphone until 2023 at one of my own
Yeah.
protests and rallies. I did
Yes. I
not
remember that.
stand on that stage. Yeah. So when people say about my profile, because I worked really, really hard, I just got on and got my head down and got on with the job and did a few videos every now and then and got arrested and
Mm.
paint bombed and did a little few things that meant that people would follow me because I was resisting.
Yes.
So just don't expect other people to stand for you, because this is it. No, nobody is coming to save anybody else. And I think my gripe came from the fact there was people that absolutely despised me, who trolled me, who lied about me, who slagged me off, that thought that they could demand of me that I storm Parliament. Now, I want to V Vendetta the shit out
Yeah.
of Parliament. Okay,
Yeah.
Liam, I do. And I'm sure a lot of people do. But if somebody else said something online to initiate that and to organize that, and a few group, a group of people turned up to do it, first of all, you've got armed cops there. Depends how far they
Mm.
take it. You might get shot for trying to
Yes.
scare, to try and storm Parliament. In my case, obviously, any whispers about me announcing some of that, I'd be arrested straight away and locked up. I'm still on a watch list. I had someone who basically said, yes, step up or step aside. It's your job to do it. You've
Mm.
earned this profile and you need to be the one basically, doing something that is genuinely, criminal, that could see me. I mean, what's not criminal these days? But I don't have a clean history. I am very, very well known. I'm on a watch list, and it is unfair for people to expect other people to martyr themselves. But it's usually only those that don't even like me and don't like other people. They criticize from their armchair and their keyboard what other people are actually doing. And there's many good people doing things that I don't like, that I wouldn't criticize. Like, I'm being honest with you, because I'm Marmite, Liam.
Yeah,
You know
I
that.
know.
You know, like, not everybody's loved me from day one, and I just don't give a shit. But I also don't like everybody, or I don't. I'm not fussed. It's not that I don't like them. It's just that I'll let you get on with your job and I'll get on with mine. But I'm not going to go and lecture them and dictate to them and then tell them how they should be doing this or what they should be doing. Just everybody should be contributing to the extent that they are willing and able. And I say that because there's some very, very good people out there who are lost and really want to do more, but don't know how. There's people that are willing to make sacrifices out there I've had lots of people reach out to me over the last few weeks, and there's going to be an army of people that are going to resist digital ID. I just think every action is worthy. And I shared the petition that got nearly 3 million signatures against digital
Mm.
ID. But did I believe that the petition itself would do anything? No, because I know that this is above the level of nation and this is globalist diktat. However, it demonstrates the sentiment of the people.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
that's why I signed it and shared
Yes.
it. And same as writing to MPs,
Mhm.
mainly
Well,
just to annoy them, inundate them with emails, just to piss them off a bit. Not because I
well,
think
I
that they've got
remember.
any power.
Yes, that last march that I saw you on, was there a possibility that you were going to be arrested at that march because you arrived slightly after everybody was there and had set up? What was going on behind that? Are you allowed to say?
Yeah, well, no, I was there from 9 o'clock in the morning on
Yes.
Whitehall.
Sure. Yeah.
So I had decided, after the success of October, the amazing, yeah, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, Keir Starmer's announcement. I announced the campaign and protests in October,
Yes.
in August. And Keir Starmer's announcement in September was like free promotion, which was ridiculous.
Yes.
But I was like, oh, good, at least people will come there. And I got invited on Sky News on
Yes.
Saturday, the day of the protest. It was
Yeah.
mental. I've never
Yeah.
had that before. And the best thing about it was every single person on the street agreed with us. Thousands
Yeah.
of people joined us. And I thought, wow, people are ready to resist. And the campaign message was so clear, and I was so proud of it, that in December, I'm very impatient as well, which is one of my flaws. I put something on that I don't think we were ready for. And I say that, I mean,
Right.
the audience, the masses, the people I'm trying to reach.
Yeah.
I think it was way too soon that I
Yeah.
decided to platform, to get a screen and a stage and platform some
Yes. I saw
speakers.
that.
I'm glad that I did it. But I think it was probably about 9 months too soon, to be honest, Liam. But no,
Right.
I was there at 9 o'clock in the morning when my screen arrived, and that the day itself wasn't even a huge shock because they put Tommy Robinson behind me,
That's right. Yeah, he was
facing
right
me.
behind.
Yeah, and that wasn't the most difficult thing about this is the first time, and you were there, so and you could probably
Yeah.
back me up on this, is the trouble
Yeah.
we had in August and September of 2020 and into
Yes.
summer of 2021. I would never formally engage with the police and go, oh, by the way, I'm doing this. I
Yes.
made it I felt like it was my duty to just not comply. I don't mind chatting to one of the police liaison on the day. In
Yeah.
fact, I quite like one of them, Simon. He's quite a nice guy. He's
Yeah.
very sweet. But he's the only one I'll speak to. I tell the others to
Yeah.
F off. I'm like, don't speak to me.
Yeah.
I don't know who you are. But
Yeah.
I won't. I've never engaged formally and given them my route and said, oh, I'm doing this. And just to let you
Mm.
know, and the Public Order Act says I've got to give you
Mm.
6 days notice if I want to march. And
Mm.
I'm going to, never done it, never done it. But like I explained to you earlier on in my little ranting,
Mm.
the laws changed, therefore the penalties are worse, and I'm not going to martyr myself for anyone. The most important thing for me is that I reach the masses. I don't care about the
Mm.
already awake that have been around for the last 5 or 6 years that criticize me and call me names and get so lost within conspiracies, within conspiracies, within
Yes. Yeah.
conspiracies. I
Yeah.
don't care about you. I'm trying to reach the masses. I'm trying to change public
Mm.
perception, and I want them to hear. So I don't care about all this nonsense in
Mm.
the background. But I formally, engaged with the police, which I realized that other people get treated very, very differently. I was
Mm.
almost immediately shut down. And I got a phone call from the police one day, and I was only going to go so far with them. And they said to me, "Oh, Tommy Robinson wants to do something on the same location,
Mhm.
same time. So can you move?"
Mhm.
And I
Okay.
just knew from that moment, I thought, I already knew about the police. They've tried to fit me up. I've got
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of sheets of paperwork under my bed. I will hold them accountable. I know what the police are. I'm not stupid, but I'm balancing that with, do I really want to get arrested and spend, several days in
Mhm.
custody before taken to court and getting held on remand at Bromsfield Women's Prison, which
Yes.
they tried to do to me before? I'm not
Mhm.
like other people. Some people give advice on being arrested that have never been arrested.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to take that risk. But it was from that moment with the Tommy Robinson phone call, and I text Tommy Robinson. I said, mate, I'm the organizer of this protest. Maybe we should speak. He
Mhm.
didn't. And then I got another call from the police with another request. And I said to Tommy Robinson, you don't need to use the Met Police as messengers. He didn't message me back. I had
Mhm.
nothing. And then the whole setup was sabotage. My screen, I was contacted by the police. I was asked to go to call command at Scotland Yard.
Mhm.
6 actually on the second one, different gold command officers in Scotland
Mhm.
Yard telling me that if I didn't follow what they wanted me to do, they were going to arrest me, seize my equipment, and prosecute me.
Mhm.
I've got them all recorded. I've got everything recorded. And I was sat here days before that rally. I got one call on Thursday afternoon and one on Friday afternoon. This is the day before the protests in December.
Mhm.
I was crying myself to sleep for about 2 weeks. I
Mhm.
had no sleep. I was exhausted. I felt like I'd contradicted myself from 5.5 years of I've never formally engaging with these officers on.
Mhm.
I know my rights. I know the law,
Mhm.
but I hadn't done a big protest in such a long time where you have thousands of people.
Yes.
And when I came out in March of 2025, the police, they hounded me all day long. And there was only a couple hundred people out at the
Yes.
day that I'd organized.
I
And
remember
I
that.
can take that. Yeah, I can take the small crowd with the, standing up to the coppers and constantly being chased and threatened with
Mhm.
arrest. I can take that. But with thousands and thousands of people, when they're really hell bent on arresting you, I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't want to be arrested, Liam, again. I don't want to go to prison. I don't.
Mhm.
I know I'd survive it because I'm strong, but I'm no use in prison. and the prospect is more real than it's ever really been. So yeah, I
Do
sat
you
there for
worry
weeks.
about the knock on the door? Do you think there's going to be a knock on the door any moment?
But when it comes to things like tweets, maybe like they watch and listen all the time. I
Yes.
told you about an experience I had with another interview, and
Mhm.
how things get interfered with. Once you're on a watch list, you don't when your activism has continued and you're
Mhm.
kind of you've done what I've done. You don't like get removed from that watch list as someone that's kind of all right. Like they've been hellbent, and they were hellbent on taking me down and putting me in prison. They kept me for 3 days on one occasion, put an application in to put me at Bromsfield Women's Prison, because they said I was a threat to the public, a threat to public
Mhm.
health. There was 3 reasons they have to give for such an application,
Mhm.
and it was, I know how bad they wanted me then, and I
Mhm.
think, I don't know, I do believe they're keeping an eye on me. They know what I'm doing, whether it be watching my online or whatever. But what they did in December was absolute sabotage. They
Mhm.
used Tommy Robinson to
Mhm.
create this. That's what they're doing now.
Mhm.
They don't need to knock on my door and arrest me, because I think they've got a balance as well with, how would that look for them? What would
Yeah.
they really arrest me under? Because they could arrest me for a tweet. I've put some tweets out that
Yeah.
could see me arrested.
Yeah.
So go ahead. But I think that what they did in December was a massive, massive knock for me, because I dealt with everything I did beforehand. I felt shit for even speaking to the police, because I didn't want to be arrested, and I'm very aware of the law change. And then they got Tommy Robinson to set up behind me. They moved my screen, and told me that if my screen was in that position, and it was like even a millimeter over the white line on the road, that I
Mhm.
would be arrested and my screen would be seized. They gave a whole lane of traffic in my protest for Tommy
Mhm.
Robinson to get access. They
Yes.
faced him towards me. They were screaming the entire time, and they moved my screen up to a traffic lights that
Mhm.
had all these. There's a separate pole with the traffic
Mhm.
lights with about 8 or 9 different cameras, a red
Mhm.
laser
Yes.
splashing into the crowd, and then a
Mhm.
mosquito alarm. The
Yes.
police did absolutely
Oh, I
everything.
remember the alarm. Yeah, I remember the
Yeah.
alarm. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was on stage like shouting about it. I was like, where the F is, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. So I'm sorry, like I didn't do that to people. Like I had no idea that that pole was there, right? Because that's not where my stage was meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got, like I said, I've got everything recorded, and I've said to the police, why the F have you put who do you think you are? And I actually said to the police, I'm not going to do it on Whitehall. There's no way. There's
Yeah.
no way I'm doing it on Whitehall. You've pushed me to where I look. Surveillance has been in London since way
Mhm.
before 2020. So can
Yeah.
we not be shocked, please, at the surveillance cameras and the facial recognition? It's
Yeah.
always been there. People think
Yeah.
that they're exposing something grand when a protest walks past a freaking camera. But
Mhm.
I tried to move and the location of the screen, and it was just threat after threat after threat from the police. And I was in tears at 9 a.m. when I got there with the screen, and there was that police liaison there. I was crying because I don't want to be arrested. I don't want to be arrested. I want this to go smoothly. But the state have in that on that day, it feels like they did a great job of not only destroying the day itself with the alarm, with the lasers,
Yeah.
with the cameras, with moving and engineering that situation, with making
Mhm.
people think there would be scuffles with Tommy Robinson's lot because
Yes.
Tommy Robinson's tweeting about it and doing videos. The
Mhm.
whole thing was to minimize that day and the impact of what I was doing.
Yeah.
No one who cared about Hope Not Hate and Tommy Robinson's putting the Christ back in Christmas. Do you know what I mean? That
Mhm.
was like a standard thing. It was special about it.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
wanted to take the attention away from digital ID, just like this
Mhm.
announcement. And they made me look a type of way. And I sit there going, yeah, got quite a bit of hate for it online for a
Do you have
while.
a support system? Do you have any kind of support system around you, or are you a warrior alone, as it were?
I'm weird question, because I've gone through, like you maybe have, sobriety being the best decision I ever made. I
Mhm.
realized that a lot of the people that were around me and have been around me for the last 6 years aren't around me for the best reasons. Like I've gotten rid of a lot of people that attach themselves to me, and I discovered a lot of people, whether it be because I could I know a lot of people, so it's like they think I can introduce them to somebody or invite them to a
Mhm.
certain kind of event, that people have tied themselves to me to ride my coattails a little bit, and I've just kept my
Mhm.
mouth shut for the longest time. I've got a very small circle.
Mhm.
Um, and I've got people that I am very, very close to, and people that I absolutely trust implicitly. I mean, I've got a volunteer that I've had for 6 years, Angel. She's brilliant. She's
Mhm.
ex-EDL. She's feisty as, but she's that perfect example of somebody that was so in something and saw
Yeah.
the light, and now she's a freedom fighter.
Mhm.
Her, Chloe, and Sharon, Alex. I've got some really good friends, and two of those are vaccine injured and bereaved, right?
Right.
That I've made over the last 6 years. But I've gotten rid of a lot of people, and they all know that they are my friends. I speak to them, but I plan and organize everything alone. And I've had people that have tried to interfere and sway me and convince me of something and tell me what to do, what not to do. And I don't trust any of that, because I always think there's an ulterior motive. So I do work alone. My website, masternoncompliance.com, I built that alone.
Mhm.
I wrote everything on there, apart from a couple of
Mhm.
contributions from Claire Wills Harrison, and Mr. and Mrs. Wilson did a letter template for me. But I do better when I work alone, because I've been burned so many times before,
Mhm.
so many times, that I'm more productive, I think. And it is lonely sometimes. And I need a boyfriend, Liam. Come on.
Well, do
I
you know,
need,
it's funny. I was going to ask you that. I was going to
oh,
say,
yeah.
surely, yeah, surely that being in this position and having a sort of fairly high profile and stuff, do you get like, fan mail? And do you attract guys who are saying, or guys or girls who are saying, "Oh, you're amazing, I want to date you," or whatever? Do you have any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I had the thing is though, back in 2020 and to 22, when it was in the height of, the resistance kind of, when we had something tangible that we were fighting, which we do with digital ID, but there was like undercover journalists and undercover cops and honey trappers like that. That was a thing then, and I know that
Yeah.
me and Kate and a few other ladies were burned by that at the time. I had a partner for I don't know, a couple of years throughout this, from late 22 into 20, late 23 something. Um, God, no, it was a bit longer than that. Anyway, at some point, right, I did have a partner, and he was very supportive of what I was doing. He used to help with the digital stuff, and he did help. He was very technologically, like, oh, he could write code, for example. He was really good. He was like a hacker. So he's very handy. Um, but he was very supportive and helped me, but he was outside of it. He wasn't
Mhm.
in this kind of resistance and this movement. I think at the time I needed that, and I think that was great. That ended. I got sober. You change, don't you, when you're with
Yeah,
someone,
yeah.
when you drink, and then yeah, I gradually got more and more sober. Um, I do. I get lovely, lovely people who offer lovely compliments and say wonderful things. Um, but it is a difficult. I appreciate this for. I've only had one partner in this whole 6 years that I was with, and I think I do appreciate that it's quite difficult. And like I said before, this risk. I'm not going to go to prison, Liam. I'm not going to volunteer
No.
myself for such a small, minor thing like protesting. I'm not risking that. I might risk it one day for something bigger,
Mhm.
because I'm angry. Like I might, but I don't have children. I'm 41 in July. I can't believe we're already in 2026, but
Mhm.
I believe what's meant to be will be. And I appreciate that it's not easy being with someone that's like me, but I also think if I'm with someone who is grounded, who knows themselves, who has no problem with their self-esteem, who is honest and loyal, then they won't take issue with what I do. And if they see things obviously the way that I see things, then great. But
Yes.
I think a lot of the problem comes from the fact that a lot of dudes don't like the fact that I do what I do. I think it's
Well,
that,
do you find that people are frightened off because it's like when I was watching you at the last event, it's such a strong image to see you at the front. You're dressed in black and you're leading the whole crowd, behind you and the supporters and all. It's a strong image. Do you feel that you're going to intimidate people?
I think I'm in alert. I look a type of way, right? I've you know, I had that nonsense back in the day, like, oh, she's a man, she's called Frank. It's like, fuck, do I have to show you pictures of like my medical information where I've had a
Yeah.
transvaginal scan on my ovaries or something? Like, what I don't understand, like, what people want from me. Um, but what was my point? What we said? What was it? I can't remember the question now. I don't know why I
Well,
started
I
going
was
into
saying,
that.
is
Now I
it
can only think about,
off-putting, you know,
yeah.
like people being intimidated by you being.
Look, it might be. Only other people can speak to that, can't they? But I
Yeah.
look the way I look. I'm quite strong. I'm not
Mhm.
tiny. I speak the way I speak. My voice is probably, is, you know, slightly huskier because of this, you know, smoking. Although I don't smoke anymore. I use that ICOS thing, that heated tobacco. But
Yeah.
anyway, like I present myself in a type of way, and you know, I like wearing black. Yeah, very much so
Right.
because of the song Johnny Cash, Man in
Yeah.
Black. You
Oh
know that
yeah,
song?
fantastic. Like Johnny
Um,
Cash. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, when you listen to the words, it means something. So yeah,
Yeah.
it is quite intimidating. But anyone else that knows me, my very good close friends and my family, and even my ex-partners could attest to it. I'm on the inside as soft as a marshmallow. Like, I love love. I care about humanity. I am so like, I love cooking for people and caring for people and making people smile and making people happy, and I love cuddles and all that. I'm really soppy as shit, and I don't look it, and I don't seem like that on the outside. And I think that's why things affect me sometimes, that people don't really care. They don't care. You know,
Mhm.
I wouldn't be able to do what I did if I didn't care and I didn't love, you know, because I do care about humanity. I'm disappointed in humanity sometimes. Um, but people don't see that, you know. So it's hard to also let people get close, to be honest, because like I say, I've been burned so much in the past. I just hope that there is a nice man out there somewhere. But yeah, what will be will
What, what
be.
was what was your worst moment in this entire sort of scenario that you've done over the last 5 or 6 years? Was it when you were being in a jail cell on your own? What was the worst?
There's two things. I wouldn't like, if you'd asked me a while ago, I might have said the worst moment was when I let all the hate and the trolling and the nastiness and the bullying from people allegedly on our side. I let that get so on top of me, and it was so difficult because my protests were very, very well attended. I was very consistent, and I used to get hijacked, sometimes violent hijack, and always men, always boys, not men, coming to the front and violently trying to rip a banner out of our hands, violently trying to take over, you know, getting physical, getting in your face with the camera and screaming at you and bullying you, like. And then the trolls online, like, I let that that nearly killed me because I took an overdose and filmed it and didn't remember, because I woke up in hospital whilst I put this video on social media that I completely forgot about. And I said, oh, that's it, I'm not doing this anymore, like, nothing I do is ever going to be good enough. And obviously that was quite embarrassing, and you know, but that was a low point. But it's one of the reasons I got sober. So when I
Yes.
look back now in hindsight, and I think that was a really fucking dark moment. I'm so sorry for swearing again. That was a really dark moment. But if it were not for that moment, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Yes.
So it's, yeah, so I've changed, and I changed the way I look at alcohol. I think it's something they give us to pacify us and to keep us
Mhm.
sort of, you know, calcified and sleepy and, you know, just
Mhm.
droning along. One of the worst thing, and I think this is where I still have like nightmares, and I'm so angry, and is the when I was in custody, um it was in the summer of 2021. I was in custody, I think, two or three times that summer. They picked me up on a warrant that didn't even exist.
Yes.
um Shortly before they arrested me for handcuffing myself to the gates of number 10. Yes,
Mhm.
okay, I was tipsy, and I was taken to Charing Cross police station several times.
Yes.
Charing Cross has just had that big expose on Panorama because they're
Mhm.
horrific. And so the first time I was like, okay, that, you know, I was a bit tipsy, but the police were brutal. They again um, strip searched me, ripped my dress open. I mean, I was taken to custody, to court the next day, and I couldn't even. I had to hold my dress closed like the entire time. Like, they didn't. That was awful. But then the an arrest after that was when they beat the shit out of me during a strip search. a
When they
male
say they
sergeant.
beat, sorry to interrupt. When they say they beat the
Yeah.
shit out of you, I mean, what are they punching you consistently?
Oh, they were throughout a strip search,
Yeah.
hitting me, kicking me, slamming my head on the floor, punching me, accusing me of kicking them, when basically I was resisting what I knew to be an unlawful strip search. But I've got what, 5, 6 officers on me on a stone floor whilst they're holding me down and hitting me and smacking my head. They literally smacked my head against the concrete floor. And there was a male officer, whilst they were trying to rip my clothes off, and there was a male sergeant, actually, or whatever he was, some senior knob from the custody suite, leaning in the doorway. And partway through, he just leaned in the doorway, was watching them do what they were doing to me, a man, and
Mhm.
said, "That's enough now." And basically, they did it to, for whatever reason, they did it to torture me, to scare me, to. And then the next day, they'd interview me, and I always give no comment. And then this whoever was interviewing me said, "Do you know DI da da da, or whatever her name was, PC blah blah blah, some woman?" I said, "Why would like?" I didn't answer the questions. I was there. I was like, "What? I don't know what they're talking about." And then it clicked. It's like this woman had accused me of kicking her during this unlawful strip search, and they tried to make out like I had some history with this copper outside of my history
Right.
with police. And I
Yes.
thought, what are they trying to do again? Trying to make this weird little, like, who is
Yes.
this woman? Like, so anyway, and the only thing I said in that interview was, you stripped me, you strip searched me, beat me unlawfully, and I'm not like, look, it was dark times, and I'm that going through that and then coming out and not actually talking about it. I've got the photos on my phone, Liam. I
Really.
used tried to use that in a defense because they arrested me after that, and I was scared about a strip search. They said I assaulted an emergency worker, and they've tortured me. They tortured me, and I got out of custody, and I've just cracked on. I announced the next rally, or I went to the next protest, or I announced the next outreach, or I went to the next vaccination centre. I didn't bang on and talk about my awful experience. I just got on with the job at hand. And I think it's been pretty dark at times, but I'm strong now. Like, I'm have moments. I mean, I cry a lot, mate. Like, I'll watch
Mm.
like The Iron Giant or The Last Unicorn or something, and I'll
Yeah.
cry.
Yeah.
But I just,
Yeah.
I'm yeah. It's been tough, but I've
Have you? I
learned
mean,
to.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, you must have suffered some real trauma over that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've had trauma. I know what trauma is, and I find sometimes unless you are going to kind of deep dive into certain topics and be able to fully explain yourself, sometimes I don't find it helpful to speak about certain things, because lots of
No, sure.
people make a comparison to what they suffered and what their
Yeah.
perception of. So it's like the word addiction. Like,
Yeah.
it's not a disease. It's not a disease. I'm sorry. Take accountability for whatever I did. Take
Mm.
accountability for whatever you emotional crutch you've used, whether it be drugs, alcohol, or whatever. um we differ. It's a really hard one to talk about, because I've got a lot of
I don't
empathy
want
and
to push
sympathy
you
for a
in
lot
any
of.
way.
No, it's look,
No.
honestly, I would, Liam. Like, we'd have that chat. I just feel
Mm.
like I'm very aware of time, and I
Yeah.
know that, I don't want to offend anybody that's watching.
Mm.
But I've seen real trauma, and I've seen people who claim to be traumatized by something, and I think, nah, like, objectively, no. Like, some people, especially in the world that we're living in now, and I don't want to make this political, but the world we're living in, people love to be victims. They
Yes. Yes.
love to be victims, and they love to say, "Oh, this label that I've attached to it suits me," and it really annoys me, because the victim mentality is like, I've never seen it before, and I think it is linked to this political stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Look, I
it's
don't
a
want to
difficult one.
pry into that because I think you're a very brave young woman for going through what you did and everything. And these things are very personal, and it's why you don't have to share them with anybody. Do you know what I
Oh, I'm
mean?
very open. I'm very open about it. I'm very open about it. I just think that, stuff's happened in the last few years. Like, the things I did go through, and what the hard work, counselling, EMDR, therapy, quitting drinking, everything that I worked so hard to correct, like as it, and to feel healthy and to feel healed, because I think we're constantly healing. I don't think anyone can sit there and go, oh no, I'm completely healed, I'm fine, I've done all my shadow work, and I'm no, I feel like we're constantly developing, growing and healing. And I got to a very, very good place in very early in very early 24. I was like, I was sleeping because I'd worked hard. I'd
Yeah.
worked for years since getting
Yeah.
sober. I was worked so hard. I was sleeping. I was happy. I was looking great. I was in a routine. I was working out. And then I had this issue with my property because I got to a point where I was like, oh no, I feel strong. I got to a point where I felt like I could deal with the issues I have with this shithole in which I live.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and then, yeah, that went completely pear-shaped, and that screwed me up. Like, so I'm battling with stuff personally all the time, constantly.
Well,
And I'm
do you ever give yourself a pat on the back because for what you have done and you've stood up, you've been very brave. Did you not give yourself a little pat sometimes and say, well, actually, I'm all right, I've done good?
I don't look for I don't look for any of that now from other people. It's wonderful when people say things, and because I know myself, I know the truth, I know who I am, I know my heart, I know my soul, and I am proud in a joyful sense that my contribution has made a difference. I can identify the things I've done well and the things I'd like to develop and the mistakes that I've made, and I can, in a sense, pat myself on the back and say that I'm good, I'm never going to give up. And I can say that now without, you know, I think my boss messed me up back in 2003 when no, 2006. It was 2003 to 2006 where he said to me, self-praise is no praise. Because I was walking around like, I'm the best waitress. I can sell the most champagne.
Yeah,
You
right.
need me. Like, that was my
Yeah.
attitude back in the day when I was a waitress. But it was true. But he
Yes.
always said, self-praise is no praise. And that
Ah,
is,
about that.
and I think that stuck with me. But no, not now.
No,
I've
no.
and it's not about, like, when people say that phrase, about loving yourself or whatever. It's like, yeah, there's a bit of that, but I'm proud of what I see when I look in the mirror, even if I've overeaten, I've got a few spots or whatever it might be. I'm very proud when I look in the mirror and say, like, I'm good,
Good
and I
for you.
don't look for that external validation. And that's something that I've had to change. I'm just going to keep going and doing what I think is right and get better at communicating what I think needs to be communicated. The basic questions of digital ID. Got to go right back to
Absolutely.
basics.
Yeah, well, it's good. We've done it all right now. So if people want to get in touch with you, where do they get in touch? What do they look for?
I think I'll say, look, go on massnoncompliance.com, because on every page at the bottom of the page on massnoncompliance.com is all of my social medias. I just feel
Yes.
like it's easier. Yeah. So people
Yeah.
can click on the link and go to my Twitter. It's Fiona Rose Diamond on, Facebook or whatever. But I think go to massnoncompliance.com, scroll down. At the bottom of every page is all of the links to my socials. You don't have to sign up for anything on there either. I really want people, rather than follow me, go to that website and read and take accountability for your own knowledge. And I will endeavor, and I've said this in every interview for the last few months, I just haven't had time because of my study and my law studies. I need to get better at explaining really, really basic. That's why my leaflet I made on the website is super basic. It's because, that was the first leaflet I'd made, but I need to get better at explaining and answering the questions that you've posed, because the masses need to understand, and they don't. You do get that conspiracy when you talk about the WEF and the
Yes.
UN as being a moral cover for the evil globalists. Like, it's hard.
Final question, then. Final question. Do you have hope or any advice for people for the future? How would you embolden as a warrior?
Nah, as 100%, I am absolutely hopeful. I have 100% faith in human beings, in humanity, in identifying this and standing up against it. There already is a very, 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 very significant resistance to this, even on the mainstream, very basic level. But I know how many I've met so many amazing people across the UK when I've traveled around the UK for the last 6 years to various different locations to support or to organize protests. I was recently, a couple of weekends ago, 24th of January, I was in Glasgow, and that was an amazing day. Those people were, and this was immediately after the announcement, like they knew. I just have a lot of faith in people, and I think that we can um, win. Like we need to understand that we have more power than the people in power. Like they have convinced us, whether it be government, the elite, whoever you're looking at that you perceive to be in power, and let's say the government, they have led people to believe that we need those muppets speaking for us and debating for us and pretending to have our best interests at heart, when they would sell their soul and sell every single one of us out for a paycheck, for a few grand. It doesn't even
Yes.
have to be a lot of money. It could
No.
be a trip to a certain place, but people need to understand they absolutely have the power, and we need to be the healthiest and most what's the word? I don't want to say use the word stable, because I don't know if you could apply that to me. I'm pretty special, but I like that. I mean, we need to have strength in mind, body, and soul completely, and know that that is part of this fight as well. We've got to look in and like understand why we do and say certain things, why we believe and think certain things. We've got to be strong in mind, body, and soul to fight this fight. And I think a lot of people are looking more at that now. But yeah, I have hope. And like I said, we don't need to convince 100% of people, because it can get frustrating. Like
Yes.
talking to people that don't see, I get that that is really, really frustrating. That's why I don't go out and, hand out leaflets so much anymore, Liam. I can't do it really.
No.
I'll help people, but I'm not there going like, I can't have chats all the time.
No.
I've got hope. We will win. We have more power than the people in power. And it's them leading us to believe the whole system is corrupt. The whole system, everything, judiciary, parliament, government, executive, every single thing is corrupt. And we will correct it. And they don't want people to know that they have the power to be able to do that. But
Look, I
we
think
do.
that's fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. And look, and I wish you great, great success, because you are a warrior. You have stood up, and I wish you nothing but success in the future, and do stay strong. I'm sure people watching this today will think, what an amazing, courageous woman. So well done.
I hope so. You'll get a few of the trolls as well. Anytime I put anything out, mate, is you always get like, "Oh, look,
Got
there's
to.
Frank again." Like, f off. Honestly, I'm no f's given era, Liam. But thank you very much, and thank you to your viewers that have sat through this, because it's longer than usual.